Everyone, this is Rona from eMaint Enterprises, and I'd like to thank you for joining us for this month's Best Practices webinar. And I'm really pleased to have with us today one of our own, one of our senior consultants, Roy Rothwell, and he's going to be presenting today's topic of SOPs and workflow process development. And Roy is a member of our professional services team. And a little bit clarification about our best practices webinar series. And that series, Roy, if you want to advance the slide, that series focuses on maintenance strategies. And so we invite guest speakers, either from our own consulting group or from other companies, to come and talk about maintenance theory and best practices that can really help you improve the business. But eMaint does offer a wide array of webinars, including product demos and product training. But I did want to clarify, this is not one of those. This is going to be really about theory and less about how you actually apply it in your software. And at the end of the presentation, I'll share some of the other training opportunities that follow along. So before I begin, just a little background on Roy. I mentioned he was a member of our professional services team, our consulting team, and he's been in this industry for over 25 years, really specializing in implementations of CMMS and EAM, and helping clients really maximize their return on infrastructure. He's also a certified CMRP and in long-standing tenure. And Roy, welcome and thanks for joining us today in spite of being a little ill, I'm sorry to say, but we appreciate it. And Roy, before we get started and people are logging in, we have quite a big group joining us today. Can you maybe tell us, Roy, I know that the professional services, you work with clients on such a variety of engagements, technical and consulting and implementations, and maybe you can talk a little bit about why you put together this particular topic and why you feel it's important to our listeners.
Of course, Rona. Hi, everybody. Today we're going to be talking about standard operating procedures and workflow process development, and it's a topic that's been coming up pretty much in most engagements that we have with our clients within the context of successful implementation of a CMMS. Procedures, it's on the agenda every time. Clients are asking about what the benefits are, and we outline the benefits, including in some of our best practice white papers and so on. So certainly today, hopefully, the material we have to offer and show will shine some lights on the benefits of SOPs in the business of maintenance and operations, and most certainly in the inclusion of a computerized maintenance management system within your organization.
All right, excellent. Well, before I just turn things over to Roy to get to the heart of the presentation, a couple of quick housekeeping notes. We are recording today's session, and we'll share a link to the recording to all of our listeners out there, along with a copy of the PDF of Roy's slides. I'm often asked, will you share the slides so you can share it with your team? And yes, we absolutely will. We'll post it on eMaint University and on our website as well. I've muted all your phone lines for the because we are recording the session, but Roy has agreed to stay through the top of the hour if needed to answer all of your questions. So please feel free at any time to type a question into the question box and go to webinar, and I'll read them to Roy at the end of the presentation. All right, so without further ado, I'll turn this over to Roy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rona. Good afternoon, good day, good morning, everybody, wherever you are in the world. I'm speaking to you today here from our offices in Dublin, Ireland. If you've been to Dublin, we've got the Guinness storehouse and Guinness factory right outside our door here. It's a dull day, typical dull day here in Dublin. Here in Dublin, we've got the eMaint EMEA offices where we take care of sales, support, and services. In relation to my role, I project manage the implementation of our eMaint CMMS projects, in addition to consulting services and training assignments as well. All of the components that enable our eMaint customers' success in achieving their CMMS goals. And most of the ingredients are outlined in this particular file on page 4. So the breadth of the offerings that we've got in professional services are pretty much outlined here. I've been involved in the implementation of computerized maintenance systems since 1989, and I was also involved in reliability-centered maintenance, and I'm a qualified reliability-centered maintenance practitioner. So over those years, you know, it's over 25 odd years, I've been involved in all of the components in terms of the implementation of CMMS systems for a number of different CMMS software providers in the business of potentially oil and gas, FDA regulated industries, semiconductor industries, facilities, transport, and so on. So a very broad breadth of experience. Over those years, and even recently, you know, organizations that I interact with and my colleagues interact with find that we have clients and prospects who are interested in taking advantage of standard operating procedures to help and assist in their implementation of their CMMS and improving their maintenance and operations best practices within their organization. So getting down to it, so this particular webinar we're going to review the fundamental reasons why an organization should document CMMS business processes and associated workflows as a best practice for ensuring quality maintenance, stores and inventory management activities. There's a couple of upfront slides that I'd just like to present here in relation to the journey as we see it here within the eMaint organization. And in relation to the journey that we find most of our customers are on in relation to the implementation of CMMS. We've got 3 vectors here. The lower one is relation to ultimately the journey. The journey from searching for a CMMS, onboarding and implementing the CMMS, and then going through the building of the appropriate foundation stones, the building blocks for success. Building blocks for success in relation to the CMMS software, and then additional reliability, engineering, and asset management concepts that can help add value to the ever more improving success of your implementation of your eMaint or CMMS product. What we find is that whatever we call phases 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, they could be months, quarters, years. As time goes on, we help our clients to solidify the building blocks in relation to the software and provide the opportunity for additional concepts in relation to the asset reliability journey. So concepts as in terms of the use of best practice and international standards certainly come into play there. So as time goes on, our organizations find that the solid building blocks of the software, in addition to reliability concepts, certainly add value in terms of operations and maintenance. The keys to success in terms of getting to the right-hand side and the uppermost arrows are in relation to bringing some business benefit in relation to asset reliability, productivity, the triple bottom line, cost, security, safety, and so on. So whatever those KPIs are, we find that by implementing the appropriate building blocks and asset reliability concepts, our most successful clients are to the right-hand side of that particular illustration. But where to start? This particular illustration here is a word cloud that we put together. It simply illustrates the vast nature of the terms and acronyms and definitions that we find within the world of CMMS. We find standards like ISO 14224. We find FRACA in relation to failure mode and effect analysis. we find reliability-centered maintenance. We hear the topic of management and strategy, ownership, accountability. All of these topics and phrases feed into the world of CMMS, and the early stages of the implementation of a CMMS questions are, where do we start? So we'll address some of these particular topics as we go through this particular webinar. So in order for us to be able to have a look at the language that's used in the CMMS world, see how we can make some sense of it, and how we can constantly communicate the accurate CMMS message using the same language across our organization. Part of that is by allowing us to use some of the support functions that we provide within our organization here in terms of professional services. What we're looking at here is a typical CMMS environment. It's a workflow type illustration, and it gives a flavor of the type of functionality that the software that eMaint can provide, and it presents the key business processes: work requests, work orders, preventive maintenance, the actors or the roles involved: managers, planners, engineers, technicians, stores people, purchasing people. So it gives an illustration of the world that CMMS software operates in, the business processes that come into play, and the roles and responsibilities of the particular users that might well be involved. So this illustration overarches topics like, asset management, work orders, preventive maintenance, inventory, purchasing, and at the bottom of the screen there we talk about maintenance history analysis, and we'll look a little bit there at some potential standards and best practice in relation to RCA, RCM, ISO 14224, ISO 55000. All of those are very, very useful best practices, and within the context of putting together a maintenance strategy and a maintenance plan, you won't go too far wrong by having a look at a standard ISO 55000. And then having a look at that particular illustration, there are various questions then that can be presented as a result of this one. What are the processes that are relevant to my organization? How do they connect with each other within the context of our organization? What are the appropriate roles and responsibilities in relation to CMMS and maintenance and operations within our organization? How do we manage these processes and functions on a daily basis? And I'd like to look at this particular illustration from a couple of perspectives. Look at it from the day in the life of any of those particular players that are on the screen. The day in the life of the supervisor, the day in the life of the technician, the day in the life of the planner, scheduler. So the roles and responsibilities, and how do those roles interact with each other? How do we manage these processes and functions on a daily basis as opposed to on a weekly, monthly, annual basis? So if we're looking at reports, we might be looking at reports on a daily basis to see what work is to be done and managing our workflows, work order backlog, and generally managing our business in terms of getting through the day and getting through the work and managing the resources efficiently, versus reporting on a monthly, quarterly basis, the more of the trending type reports. So that's what's going on down towards the bottom of that particular illustration. And how do we measure success over the longer period of time? Well, reports and dashboards assist us with that. And are there any standards or best practices that we should consider in our world and in the context of our maintenance and operations business in our place? So all of these are potential questions to be answered in the onboarding early phases of our implementation. And this particular illustration goes some way towards helping to get our heads around that. So what are the secrets to CMMS success? And in the context of SOPs, so eMaint, we've launched a new website last week, eMaint.com, and in there you're going to find a wealth of knowledge and information. The resources section in the new website and go to the best practices and white paper section, there's a white paper there called What's the Secret to CMMS Success? So it's the one shown on the right there. And in the Secrets to CMMS Success, we outline 10 keys to success. Within the context of the 10 keys to success, their topic for today, standard operating procedures and workflow processes are identified as key. And we'll have a look further at these. And we have an illustration of our old friend George here for those of you who are familiar with eMaint and some of our visuals over the years. So George is a successful maintenance manager. He's implemented the keys to success, and somewhere along the line he's utilized SOPs and workflow processes in his journey. Best practices in our business, standards in our business are, of course, very, very useful, very, very worthwhile. We do our best to take advantage of them. So adopting best practices, it's a critical ingredient in the successful implementation of a CMMS. So for all you Simpsons fans there, it's not quite a bad day at school, but certainly very, very useful to take advantage of industry best practice and standards. So some of those useful best practices and standards are, ISO 14224, 55000, some of the SMRP reports and guidelines, and ISO 9000 from a quality perspective. So just in terms of setting the scene, that gives us a general flavor. Rona, just over to you maybe for the first poll, please.
Okay, so we're going to have just a couple of poll questions just so we can learn a little bit about our listeners today and where you are in your personal journey. So if you don't mind answering one of these questions, providing one of these answers to the questions. How does your company today disseminate standard operating procedures? Do you do it through your CMMS? Is it done kind of just person to person? Are there written instructions that the various stakeholders follow? Or perhaps you don't have SOPs and you're here to kind of learn more about perhaps why you might want to. So if you don't mind, this will really help Roy and the rest of the presentation see where you are and what to focus on. All right, so it looks like we've had about, 2/3 of the votes in. And by the way, I'm not keeping track of any personal responses. These are just in aggregate so that we can all see where you are in your journey. All right, so let me go ahead. It looks like everyone's voted. Let me go ahead and share those results. So Roy and our listeners, it looks like 6% are currently using a CMMS for SOPs. 9% do it kind of ad hoc or over the phone. 64% or 2/3 have written instructions, but they're not currently in a system. And then 21% say they do not have SOPs, so they're here to learn more. I guess it is good to see that 2/3 of the people have them. That's great. So I am going to go ahead and turn it back to you, Roy.
Okay, Rona, thank you very much for that. So folks, just to let you know, yesterday I gave a similar presentation at a conference here in Dublin, and a very, very similar response. So similar poll question, very similar response. In fact, probably a little bit less in terms of the 54% that answered to C there. But in any case, we find that there is always room for improvement, and we find that lots of our clients and prospects look for a little bit more assistance in relation to putting SOPs together in relation to their CMMS implementation. So a little bit more, what is a standard operating procedure? So the use of, or why standard operating procedures? Well, the use of standard operating procedures, very, very useful, enable successful, effective, and efficient implementations. Why is that the case? Our experience and feedback from our clients says that it ensures standardization in terms of the implementation of their CMMS. It ensures CMMS implementation success. It ensures that the data within the software and within the operating context is valid. Ensures that areas of responsibility are clearly understood, and ensures that periodic auditing and the continuous improvement of the business in relation to the upkeeping of the SOP is critical. So standardization, implementation success, valid data, roles and responsibilities, and continuous improvement in relation to periodic auditing are the key areas and the 5 reasons why our clients tell us that SOPs are so critical in terms of the implementation of their CMMS. I went to Encyclopedia Britannica to just get a definition. It's a pretty good one. Standard operating procedures are a set of written guidelines or instructions for the completion of a routine task designed to increase performance, improve efficiency, ensure quality through systemic homogenization. What are the characteristics of an SOP? Well, more from Encyclopedia Britannica. To systemize the individual steps performed in the implementation of a task, to identify and summarize the task, describe its purpose, and specify when and by whom it is to be performed, and describe the sequential procedures to be followed. So in summary, a systematic approach, an approach related to a quality system, an approach that documents roles and responsibilities clearly, and an approach that presents sequential activity in a visual format. In relation to CMMS SOPs, a little bit more in terms of definition, how the system will be utilized and how the flow of data is put together to ensure standardization. The most critical phase of the implementation is often overlooked and caused more CMMS implementation failures. So, the implementation of SOPs is critical to success. The purpose, to ensure repeatable standards are established. Repeatable standards are established. So consistency, that those standards are understood by all users and that are adhered to and periodically audited. So, it's an education to users to ensure that they're aware of the SOPs, and education in the context of training in relation to the software and training in relation to the use of the software within the context of the maintenance and operations business. To ensure that the data is valid, in terms of how the data is collected in the data acquisition phase, and how then the data is maintained and supported within the software. And then seamlessly blended into everyday use so that it doesn't become a burden. So SOPs are there to be referenced, to be the guideline, sometimes to be the rules, to ensure that activities are carried out correctly. But don't make them difficult or cumbersome, but do make them easy to use. So I mentioned a little bit about the ISO connection, the standards connection. So ISO 9001, it talks about SOPs and workflow processes in this context from a process approach. And we will see some visualizations a little bit later in the presentation. But ISO 9001 mentions, often the output from one process directly forms the input for the next. And the application of a system of processes within an organization, together with the identification and interactions of these processes and their management to produce the desired outcome, and can be referred to as the process approach. So we have the inputs from one side in terms of resources, some processing activity going on, and then as a result of that we've got an output in terms of a product or a service. So the inputs, processes, and outputs. Another visual of this process approach. So for an organization to function effectively, it has to determine and manage numerous linked activities. We have lots of linked activities within our business in terms of CMMS implementation. An activity or a set of activities using resources and managed in order to enable the transformation of inputs into outputs can be considered as a process. And finally, from the ISO 9001 world, so when you use it in the quality management systems approach, we emphasize the importance of using and understanding, meeting requirements, the need to consider processes, obtaining results of process performance and effectiveness, and continuous improvement of processes based on objective measurement. So what does it all mean then in terms of what might an SOP look like and the components of an SOP within the context of a CMMS? So an SOP in relation to the CMMS is typically going to have a number of components, maybe 10 or 12 components. Certainly a component or an ingredient might be a definition of what the purpose of the actual CMMS SOP is. It might talk to establishing goals and objectives and standards, performance measures, criteria, guidance, and so on. So general narrative in relation to the purpose of the SOP. What then will the scope of the actual SOP contain? So again, more general narrative, but a lot of this information is coming from a strategic perspective in terms of the implementation of a CMMS within the context of your maturing maintenance and operations organization. So the scope may well apply to all of the maintenance functions within the organization, and key elements of that scope might talk to leadership and management commitment to the implementation of the CMMS and in the success of the maintenance and operations world. The scope will include responsibilities and roles, the data, what it looks like and how it's been put together, the tasks to be scheduled on a routine basis, for example, but more importantly that the overall SOP is maintained and the program itself is maintained on a regular basis. More information about the components of an SOP. Objectives and goals. So identify the goals and the objectives are the targets and will sometimes not immediately be achievable. However, with partner input and cooperation, these targets of course can be achieved and sustained. I guess within the context of an onboarding project and in the context of your SOP, the low-hanging fruit to be addressed early on, the business processes that are going to be in play, and as time goes on, the components of the SOP that needs to be updated and enhanced as time goes on, most definitely as part of the continuous improvement process. So the objectives and goals might include some one-liners, some bullets in the context of timely proactive responses to getting things done, ensuring the quality of the maintenance job plans and tasks at the right level, that the appropriate KPIs have been discussed, analyzed and understood, focusing efforts on improving reliability, and that may be more than just implementing a CMMS. It may be looking at techniques and technologies for improving reliability, and ensuring that the right materials and spare parts are available at the right place, at the right time, and in the right condition. So in terms of objectives and goals, coming from a strategic perspective within the context of your implementation of your maintenance system and your CMMS. Other items that comprise the CMMS SOP, from the top down, potentially a mission statement. And when I say top down, I guess in terms of supporting the mission of the implementation of the maintenance system and the CMMS system, so that it notes and it's a narrative around how the business aligns with the company's goals and objectives, and focuses on the needs and the concerns of the employees, the customers, and the community within the maintenance organization. And maybe additionally some guiding principles that they will be developed to show how you intend to accomplish your mission. And you may be connecting up to international best practice, world-class best practice, and for any additional information on any of those best practices or concepts, please don't hesitate to give us a call, touch base with our pre-sales team, or even our customer success managers. A reliability statement might be also another component because it gives the clear indication that the SOP is related to the fact that as an organization we're aiming to achieve better practice in relation to asset reliability and equipment reliability. So some of the items that might be included within that component of the SOP might be some of those bullets identified there. Compliance with job plans, maintenance schedules, and all other work systems that add value to your operation. The idea of proactive maintenance being a high priority to maintain the highest state of reliability, to ensure that will be completed with precision and as scheduled, that only the correct spare parts will be utilized, and the scheduled work must be prioritized to ensure the necessary resources are deployed properly based on equipment criticality and work priority. So a statement in relation to reliability, how the organization is aiming to improve, and an endorsement by leadership that this is the organization that's in safe, capable hands to achieve that particular reliability statement. Another component might be a sustainability statement, where there's a commitment to ongoing learning within your organization. So it's not just about the CMMS software, nor is it about specifically the asset world, but this is the resource world, the people world. That each individual has the opportunity to acquire the necessary skills and knowledge to perform their job responsibilities, that all parts used will be properly documented and charged to a specific asset or a work order, that all work performed will be captured proactively, planned and scheduled and executed, and all work will be followed and documented, workflow processes and routinely audited to identify opportunities for improvement. So this particular foil talks to the people side of the implementation of maintenance systems and CMMSs, and one of the success stories is a client that we've got, CB Fleet, and last month Mark Cote from CB Fleet, he gave a presentation. It's one of our best practice webinars now. It's recorded, but Mark talked about this particular area and how to bring employees, bring resources along with you on your journey in relation to successful CMMS implementation and successful maintenance and operations management. Another component of the SOP we find is an organization chart. It gives a flavor of the players involved, the roles of the players, and where they play in terms of the implementation of CMMS and the maintenance organization. And we like to expand on that in terms of what we call a RACI chart. RACI stands for Responsible, Accountable, Consulted, Informed. So this particular illustration gives a flavor of the roles of the various resources or the actors that are involved in the business of maintenance management. And down the left-hand side, we've got the block numbering. We will also see those a little bit later when we see a visualization in a workflow. And down the middle, the various types of business processes or the actual activities that the various roles will be involved in. So we'll tie all of these up together in a visual later on in the presentation. So, but the RASI chart gives a great illustration of the roles in terms of responsibility, accountability, consulting, and informed. Another component of the potential SOP would be the topic of taxonomy, and it brings us back to where we were earlier with the word cloud. The word cloud can present lots of ambiguity for us. So in relation to taxonomy and SOPs and word clouds, defining what we mean by assets, equipment, classes, parts, various attributes on a work order, the various attributes on an asset form. All of these built into a upfront definition of what we call the data management taxonomy. And more to that in relation to the different types of information that we capture to allow us to improve. And what we're talking about here is improving potentially routine preventive maintenance, corrective maintenance, and downtime, and so on. Again, more terms, more definitions. So it's important up front that we understand and educate ourselves in some of these terms, particularly because they're going to play a role in our world in terms of improving maintenance. And it's important that these terms don't get confused. So if we're looking for some standards and some definitions, we won't go too far wrong by using standards like ISO 14224 or the SMRP eMetrics for some guidance. When it comes to more metrics, again, the standards like 14224 and SMRP, very, very useful. We've got some examples here, and in terms of our CMMS maintenance SOP, it gives some guidance as to the road we're intending to travel in terms of trending some of the reports and metrics in relation to the implementation of our system, aiming for greater than 80% of the work would be planned, 80-20 rule. That scheduled compliance will be over 90%, and so on, so that each of these KPIs are understood. We understand how they're calculated, and then that we can document them and use these as our KPIs that we can trend against and measure ourselves against on a regular basis. Most SOPs that I've been involved with and that I've come across have visuals like process flow diagrams. Here's an example of a simple work order type process flow. So back to our visual in relation to the ISO 9001 guidance in terms of inputs, process, and outputs. They come in all sorts of shapes and forms. Most I find look like this, and not dissimilar to the earlier one that we showed, the CMMS environment. So CMMS SOPs typically include a business flow diagram. Typically a business process flow diagram relates to a specific workflow or activity, for example like work order processing, preventive maintenance management processing, asset maintenance processing, or spare parts issue against work order, and so on. A little bit more advanced is this one here, and this particular process flow also links a reference back to some more detailed process descriptions. So WHC01 relates to a process description which has a narrative around the business process that the actual flow is related to. So the combination of the process flow in relation to the roles that are involved in the activities and the narrative describing what's to be done, all combined to provide useful SOP information. The detailed process description links back then to the process flow. So where we had the reference WCH01, the statement to us to determine whether the assigned work is completed, WCH2, complete all work orders and tasks, and so on. So we combine the narrative in terms of the description with the process flow, with the roles and responsibilities in terms of the RASI chart to give us good guidance as to the way to approach a particular activity. What we find in our world in relation to rolling out eMaint CMMS in single user sites or multi-user organizations, we find that when the information is written down in a single point of truth in an SOP, our organizations and our customers benefit massively. What we find is that we roll out our software in a number of different ways. And from the left-hand side here, we might have organizations who've got master accounts and consolidated accounts in an international global rollout. So the left-hand side is an illustration of a consolidated account format. The one in the middle is more of a master account type format where information gets centralized in a master account and gets pushed out to various sites. And on the right-hand side, we have an illustration of our multi-site inventory locations model. Now, all of these have a significant amount of necessary information for users of the software to know about, and in terms of how the software is used then in real life. So documenting how this type of multi-site toolkit is taken advantage of within the context of rolling out a CMMS should be documented in SOP so that resources know what to do, where and when. If I can hand over to you now again there, Rona, for our second and final poll, please.
Certainly. So now we'd like to ask, now that you know, we've been discussing the importance and some of the different use cases for SOP, tell us what might be your goal in developing SOPs within your CMMS. Is it to get further visibility into daily processes, or is it more about standardization across a single facility, across multiple facilities? Is it for compliance and regulatory compliance, or ISO, or various types of compliance? Or lastly, do you not think after listening today that you will develop SOPs? But since about 2/3 of you already had them, hopefully we'll hear one of the first three, and you've picked up a few things along the way. All right, so a couple more people are voting, and let me leave this open for a few more moments, and then we're going to wrap up and get on with our Q&A. All right, so I'm closing the poll, and allow me to share it. So it looks like 40% are looking really for more visibility into the daily processes. 48%, nearly half, say it's for standardization, and about 12% say compliance. And good, no one, I guess no one who's lasted this long feels that they're not going to have SOPs. So back to you, Roy.
Okay, thank you very much, folks. Glad to hear that there's nobody in category D today. Thank you for that. So a quick summary. You know, the 5 whys as to why SOPs are useful and business processes and workflows. You know, to ensure standardization, to ensure your CMMS is implemented successfully, to ensure your data is clean, accurate, and maintained, to ensure that areas of responsibility in terms of your CMMS rollout in the context of your maintenance and operations business are clear, simplistic, and understood, and to ensure that your SOP and your business is periodically audited for continuous improvement. And finally, a rundown of the components a CMMS SOP might contain. A purpose, a scope, objectives and goals, mission statement, guiding principles, a reliability statement, sustainability statement, an organization structure that ties into the RACI chart in terms of roles and responsibilities, data management taxonomy, CMMS definitions, the governing metrics, then the process flows in relation to the various business processes for asset management, work order management, preventive maintenance management, inventory management, purchasing management, and maybe some of those subdivided. And then the connection between the process flow diagrams and the detailed process descriptions to ensure we have the narrative around the inputs, the processes, and the outputs. That's it in terms of presentations, folks. Happy to take any questions.
Certainly. Again, if you can go ahead and type your questions into the question box. And I did want to share, we had some people ask about training and about eMaint, and I will make sure for those of you, you'll all get a copy of today's slide deck, and we'll include some slides on some other opportunities, some different types of training. And for those of you who are eMaint users, the various webinars, workshops, boot camps, and such that we have. One person was asking us, though, they asked specifically about eMaint, but for anyone out there with any CMMS, what are some of the places in which you put these SOPs into eMaint, as PM tasks and such? Can you give some examples of once people have developed these SOPs, how they utilize them in their CMMS system?
Well, typically what occurs is that the SOPs are an internal document for your organization. What we find is that the SOPs are set up as internal documents, but also then linked within the eMaint system. So in terms of training and education, the SOPs are connected as a linked document within the software. We also find that the eMaint University functionality provides and adds in that particular area. When it comes to actually linking SOPs to any specific area within eMaint, it's probably not something that we come across too often. There may be from time to time SOPs related to work activity or preventive maintenance activity, for example, where there may be some instructions or guidelines or an SOP to refer to in terms of the business activity of carrying out a maintenance task, for example. So potentially linking up the instructions for work to be done within the context of a preventive maintenance task is where there may be additional connectivity to, I guess, asset maintenance SOPs.
Perfect. Well, I hope that gives them an idea. And we've had, again, several people asking for the presentations. We absolutely will share a copy of the slides and a recording later today. Someone is asking for a clarification, Roy. What's the difference between an SOP and what they're calling a JI or a job instruction? Are they one and the same?
They can be, but not necessarily. A job instruction is typically a task to be carried out in relation to a work order or a preventive maintenance work order, whether it's reactive or corrective. So for me, a JI, job instruction, would be the same as a procedure or a task. Some organizations might consider that also to be an SOP. In terms of, I guess, the presentation today, going back to the components of a CMMS SOP, this is at a high level where we're looking at, I guess, organization information and instructions in terms of who's involved in the implementation and the use of the software. If I just go back to an earlier file, if I may. So the SOP in terms of setting up your system, maintaining your system, ensuring that the roles and responsibilities of the players involved within the context of the business processes, that's really where we're coming from in terms of CMMS SOP. In terms of a JI, really what we're looking at there is towards the middle of the screen, up at the top, where we have assets, tasks, resources, and parts. In that case, we're talking, I guess, about work order processes, what we call PM tasks, or what we call work order tasks. That's where JIs would come into play. And now, it's not to say that a JI could not also be an SOP.
Gotcha. Okay. Someone is also asking that, I don't think this person has a CMMS, but where they, let's say, were to purchase a CMMS from eMaint, do you often help clients or your group, Roy, develop their SOPs if they don't currently have them?
Yes, we do. It's part of our consulting offering in the professional services department. So what we do is we interact with our clients very closely. We can attend site. We would spend time with the appropriate stakeholders. We would chart out the appropriate business processes, the appropriate workflows, and from there develop the appropriate documentation.
Gotcha. Okay. And one listener is asking about eMaint and its ability, or CMMSs, to integrate with various building management or other types of systems. Do you want to just speak briefly, Roy, to some of the types of integrations you've seen with our CMMS?
Sure. Again, another offering that we've got there, it's within our technical bundle, if you like, down there at the right-hand side, integration services. The typical types of integrations interfaces that we come across will be in relation to where stores and purchasing comes into play, with CRMs and the likes of SAP, also in relation to SCADA systems, and in relation to BMSs or FMSs. So usually what we find is that these building management systems or facility management systems, they also provide information that would provide trigger points that we will need eMaint to initiate some sort of an action, like a work order or a preventive maintenance action or a condition monitoring action. So we interface with systems like this regularly. In order to make it happen, we would go through a process of working out what the actual goals are, put together an appropriate specification, put the appropriate system together, test, and roll it out. So it's something that we deal with regularly, and it's part of our integration services.
Great. On a related note, someone is also asking about integration with GIS systems, which is another example of how you trigger. And I know we do that as well, and to trigger follow-up actions. Oh boy, we have so many questions. I'm going to ask a couple more, but then I do promise we'll have someone, if we can't get to all of them. This stimulated a lot of questions, and I want to be mindful of the time, but we do promise to follow up later today. We have someone here who is looking to implement a CMMS initially, Roy, for managing work requests, and is concerned about, the full breadth of the system. Can you share, how I know that I've certainly talked with clients that do work requests first, followed by preventive maintenance. Can you maybe talk to that about how you can implement the modules and some of the advantages of doing it in phases?
Sure. I think the best illustration that we've got in relation to this is the illustration I'm showing on the screen there now, the CMMS Journey. And every organization has got their own unique journey and the low-hanging fruit, or as my colleague Greg Perry says, how do you eat an elephant? Well, you do it in small chunks. So what the appropriate implementation steps are for you, we can certainly work with you at your pace to ensure that the implementation is successful. If it's work requests followed on by work orders for the corrective maintenance side of the house, and if that works for you, depending on the size and scale of your organization, then that's absolutely fine. And then whatever the other CMMS building blocks in terms of functionality that need to be in play. So this CMMS journey within the context of the CMMS environment, a good place to start to see what functionality do we need to implement to give us the momentum to get the system up and running, to encourage our users to use the software, to be able to allow us to gather the information that we need to improve whatever it is that we need to improve, whatever those KPIs are that we need to improve. So certainly, if it's work requests first, that's great. It gets you up and running. If you want to advance that to more advanced work orders, that's great. To advance even further to ensure that the information you're capturing when you're closing the work order is of value, then that's great as well. And then maybe somewhere down the line it might be moving across into the preventive maintenance world, adding then your spare parts and your stores management capability, adding on your purchasing capability, and maybe advancing further then to the barcoding technologies that assist with the efficiencies in your storeroom, or going mobile and taking advantage of the efficiencies built into having your technicians out of the coalface and less time spent dealing with administration tasks and so on. So certainly whatever it takes to get you to whatever the most appropriate CMMS environment is for you along your journey, and whether the numbers on the bottom of the screen there relate to weeks, months or years, we can work with you to put together the most appropriate plan for you to help you on your way.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Roy. I'm afraid we have run out of time, though certainly not out of questions. I do promise that later today, or definitely by morning, we'll get you answers for those that we couldn't address during the session. And we will also send a copy of the slides and a link to the recording. And I'd love to thank all of our listeners out there. We hope those of you that don't currently have SOPs are now inspired to start to create some, and that those that already do might have picked up a couple of tricks, a couple of tips. And Roy, I'd like to thank you so much for putting this together and sharing some of your experience and insights to help all of our listeners out there. So again, thank you all for attending. When I end the webinar, there'll be a brief survey. Please let us know how we did and what other topics we can bring to you that are of value. So from Roy and Rona from eMaint, thank you everyone, and to your CMMS success, and have a great day.